Don't even think about it.
According to the film's official novelization, this character is Liz Allen, a character from the comics whom we would later see in Spider-Man: Homecoming, renamed Liz Toombs, the daughter of Adrian Toombs, aka the Vulture. On this screen, we can see a list of the abilities Peter will gain after the spider bite.
We solved the Horizon Glide!
This character is a classic Spider-Man villain known as Professor Mendelstrom, who is also an enemy of Norman Osborn. In this shot from the movie, we can see that one of the lab's domes is labeled with the number 23. This is a reference to the Amazing Spider-Man number 23, a classic Spider-Man comic in which he fights the Green Goblin, and where Norman Osborn appears for the first time, though it is not yet revealed that he and the Goblin are the same character. In Peter's room, we can repeatedly spot posters from the Magic: The Gathering trading card game. On the shelf, we can see several track and field trophies, most likely belonging to Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's car is actually director Sam Raimi's personal car, and it appears in every one of his films. The room where Norman wakes up after becoming the Green Goblin for the first time is the only one in the entire mansion with green walls, likely a visual nod to his alter ego. Norman losing his memory of what he did as the Green Goblin is a reference to the comics, where this happened repeatedly after he discovered Spider-Man's identity. Every time the Goblin returned, the story would end with Norman suffering memory loss, until his death in issue number 122. Tobey Maguire actually performed this scene without CGI or practical effects. The only assistance he had was a light adhesive on the tray surface. It took him 156 attempts to get it right. When Peter is designing his suit, we can notice a couple of details. First, he discards the idea of using a utility belt. This is a reference to the comics, where Spider-Man does use a belt to store extra web cartridges, spider tracers, and even his spider signal. In one of the designs, we can see a logo on his head that resembles the marking found on the backs of Black Widow spiders, and another variant that is reminiscent of the superhero Stingray. When Norman sits down to read the note that foretells his downfall at Oscorp, if we pause the scene we can clearly make out the text and uncover several interesting details related to Osborn. To begin with, the article mentions that Oscorp was founded in 1966, the same year issues number 39 and number 40 of The Amazing Spider-Man were released, which the movie draws heavily from. Among other things, those issues include the moment when the Goblin discovers that Peter is Spider-Man and the reveal that the Goblin is actually Norman Osborn. Regarding the company, the note states that before it was called Oscorp Industries, it operated under the name Osborn Manufacturing. It also explains that Norman had to mortgage his home and borrow money from everyone he knew in order to avoid bankruptcy. In the mid-1970s, the company shifted its focus from industrial equipment to defense contracts, despite several close friends questioning Norman's decision. In 1983, the company Valid Defense System attempted a hostile takeover of Oscorp, but Norman managed to save the company after spending 2 full days calling and persuading shareholders to change the direction of their vote. In the present day within the film, the rival company has changed its name to Kirk and now specializes in producing computer cards, while Oscorp remains among the 2 or 3 largest private defense contractors in the country. At just 18 years old, Norman was one of the youngest graduates in MIT's history and began showing interest in miniaturized computing. Throughout his career, he published more than 250 papers and became a major pioneer in nanotechnology and its applications. However, the article also mentions that he is far from well-liked in the workplace. He is described as arrogant, authoritarian, and aggressive, and some claim that his rise to the top was made possible in part by sacrificing people who had once been loyal to him. The article mentions that Osborn had always maintained a good relationship with the government, until the recent change in administration, likely referring to the Bush presidency. The new Secretary of Defense despises Norman, putting the contracts between Oscorp and the government under serious strain. Oscorp's new rival in the defense contracting race is Quest Aerospace, which is developing an armor and transport system known as the Badger. Later in the film, we see the Green Goblin attack the Badger's test run, taking out the Secretary of Defense in the process. However, Quest Aerospace's involvement in the competition complicates things for Oscorp's own project, the Super Soldier program. If the name sounds familiar, it's no coincidence. Super Soldier is the same term used during World War II for the program that created the serum that transformed Steve Rogers into Captain America. However, in this scene there's no direct mention of the hero or the war. The project is simply referenced as another scientific development within Oscorp's corporate world. According to the report, the decision to fire Norman comes from the fact that he is directly tied to the Super Soldier program, which has a high chance of being shut down. If that happens, the only option the company has to reassure investors is to reinvent itself and prove that it will no longer be guided by Osborn's individual vision. However, the Super Soldier program has been highly praised by the scientific community, introducing major innovations in the fields of chemistry and nanotechnology. The goal of the program isn't to create weapons, but to turn soldiers into weapons by enhancing their strength, endurance, reflexes, and mental acuity, all abilities Norman will gain when he becomes the Green Goblin. In any case, it's not the only defense project Oscorp is working on, and there's even an explanation for why a military suit like the Green Goblin's includes a mask with a deliberately monstrous appearance. According to the article, they are developing a piece of hardware designed to instill fear in the heart of the enemy. The goal of the program isn't to create weapons, but to turn soldiers into weapons by enhancing their strength, endurance, reflexes, and mental acuity, all abilities Norman will gain when he becomes the Green Goblin. Despite all of this, there is a sidebar noting that the company's stock is already falling, which likely accelerated the decision to fire Norman. The actor who plays Bonesaw McGraw is Randy Savage, also known as Macho Man, a real former WWE wrestler who passed away in 2011.
What's your name, kid?
This character is played by Bruce Campbell, the star of the Evil Dead saga directed by Sam Raimi, who is also the director of Spider-Man.
Say chess! Chess!
This scene takes place immediately after the Green Goblin's first attack and right before Peter and Norman meet, so it's no coincidence that the color green is so deliberately prominent in the visual design. Aunt May has a certain fondness for plants. Here we can see she's wearing a plant-patterned outfit. Here's another one. The house is wallpapered with plant-themed designs, and she also keeps several plants in the living room and sitting area. In this shot, we can briefly see the Twin Towers reflected in Spider-Man's eyes. This serves as a tribute, since by the time the movie was released, the towers had already been destroyed. Throughout the film, the wardrobe makes extensive use of the colors associated with each character. Here, for example, we can see MJ wearing Spider-Man's colors. This photograph of Spider-Man comes from a behind-the-scenes moment of the film, where you can see that, at the time, the production was considering giving Spider-Man black lenses instead of white ones. This was later confirmed by artists who worked on the movie. We can also notice several complaints about bug infestations throughout the city. This will become important later on when a specific joke in the movie pays it off. The artist performing at the festival is Macy Gray, an R&B and neo-soul singer. We all know who this man is, right? When Peter runs and opens his shirt to reveal the suit underneath, it's a homage to how Christopher Reeve did it in the Superman films. In this shot, we can see small holes in the suit's wrists where the webbing is meant to come out.
Spine.
In Norman's mansion, we can see several tribal masks used as decoration, which may have served as inspiration for the Green Goblin's mask. Willem Dafoe revealed that when he played the Green Goblin's persona, he used his real, slightly uneven teeth. But when he portrayed Norman, he wore prosthetics to make them look straighter and more polished. Here we can see the ironic joke the Daily Bugle makes about the earlier mention of the bug infestation, implying that Spider-Man is part of the plague that needs to be eradicated. More flowers. On Peter's desk, we can see the Daily Bugle issue offering rewards for photos of Spider-Man. This scene is taken from Spectacular Spider-Man magazine number 2. We can also see that, both in the comic and in the film, Norman is dressed in Spider-Man's colors while Peter wears the Green Goblin's. In the movie, Harry, caught between both characters, ends up wearing a mix of their colors. Even more flowers. In this scene, we can see a second Green Goblin in the background, a production mistake that was accidentally left in. However, many fans interpreted it as a subtle hint at Harry eventually following in his father's footsteps. The scene where the Green Goblin throws MJ from the bridge is a homage to the Amazing Spider-Man number 121, where he does the same to Gwen Stacy, an event that ultimately leads to her death. The moment where the Green Goblin grabs Spider-Man with a cable is taken directly from the Amazing Spider-Man number 28. When the Green Goblin rips through the web, you can hear a metallic sound, emphasizing how strong and resistant Spider-Man's webbing is, almost like steel. Norman's death scene is almost identical to how it happens in the Amazing Spider-Man number 122.
Parker, hello, you're fired.
Why?
Oh, hey. Wow, Dr. Connors. Sorry.
Where were you headed, Parker?
I'm really sorry, Mr. Dickovich. All I got is this 20 for the rest of the week.
Sorry doesn't pay the rent. Don't try to sneak past me. Here's what you can. Nice. Rodent. Shoelace.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Before we start, has anybody lost a large roll of $20 bills in Alabama?
What are we gonna call this guy?
Dr. Octopus.
That's crap.
Science Squid?
Crap.
Doctor Strange.
Where the hell did you get that? In the garbage. Garbage. Must have given up. Thrown in the towel.
Where have you gone to, Spider-Man?
In the opening sequence, we can see sand moving and the symbiote crawling across the webbing, referencing 2 of the 3 villains. However, Harry also has a subtle nod. The webbing briefly turns green when footage from the previous film is shown. Likewise, when the scene featuring MJ from the end of Spider-Man 2 appears, the webbing turns golden. The different newspapers showing that people love Spider-Man may be due to the fact that he saved a baby from a fire, something all the papers highlight in their articles. There are several references throughout the movie suggesting that Peter is still struggling financially, such as the fact that he can only afford the ring because the store offers a layaway plan. While watching the play, Peter quietly repeats the dialogue under his breath. This suggests that he has seen the performance several times, unlike in the previous film, where his role as Spider-Man left him with no time for such things. This scene shows that he has finally achieved a balance between both sides of his life. In this shot, we can see 3 Goblin masks, one from the first film, Harry's mask, and another that appears to be a slight redesign of the original, one that many believe is meant to represent the Hobgoblin's mask. When we see Harry's glider in this scene, we can notice that it has a kind of screen right in the middle, which may serve as a guide for Harry, displaying stabilizers and other functions of the board while he's using it. Peter is still using the helmet with the label torn off from the previous movie. In this shot, we can notice that Harry doesn't have 2, but 5 retractable blades on his glider. If we play this shot in slow motion, we can see the sword piercing through its own sheath while emitting a green glow. As we discussed in the video about the first movie, Oscorp was developing nanotechnology, so it's possible that the sword is powered by that same technology. This would also explain why the retractable blades on the forearms remain so discreet when not in use, likely relying on nanotechnology as well. If we pay close attention to the sword's impacts on metallic surfaces, we can see that they appear to partially disintegrate the material, leaving behind a green halo after each strike. From this, we can infer that a direct stab from the sword would cause truly lethal and severe damage to Peter. If we play this shot in slow motion, we can better see the pumpkin bomb in its retracted mode before being launched into Harry's hand. When Peter is attacked by the flying blades, one of them cuts his leg. If we watch the scene in slow motion, we can see that the wound is actually quite severe, judging by the amount of blood. While Harry is being operated on, we can see that Peter is watching from the doctor's changing room rather than from the hallway. This could suggest that he snuck in through the changing room's window in order to be there and see his friend. In this shot, we can see a resemblance to one of the panels from The Amazing Spider-Man number 4, the comic in which Sandman made his debut. When Spider-Man saves Gwen, at normal speed it seems as if he doesn't reach her before the rock hits, creating a moment of tension that is quickly relieved in the next shot. However, if we watch the scene in slow motion, we can see that Spider-Man does grab her in time and both emerge unharmed. Spider-Man saving Gwen from a fall could also be a reference to Gwen's death in the comics, where Spider-Man tries to save her from a fall but she dies instantly. In this shot, we can see the front page of the Daily Bugle from the previous movie. In fact, in Spider-Man 2 we even see how that front page is put together. When Eddie enters the Bugle, we can see 2 front pages in the background, one referencing the Statue of Liberty, possibly tied to its 100th anniversary in 1986, and another about the infamous killer Charles Manson. During the development of the following scene, we can see several Daily Bugle front pages from the first movie hanging on the wall in the background. Well, we all know who this gentleman is. When Harry is discharged from the hospital, he's wearing clothes similar to the ones he wore in Spider-Man 2002. This visually suggests that, in a way, Harry has returned to who he was at the beginning of that movie. Among the signs people hold up for Spider-Man, one asks whether there is a Spider-Woman, and another calls for Spider-Man to be president. In the comics, Spider-Woman is a real character, and there is indeed a version of Spider-Man in the multiverse who becomes president. When the police open fire on Sandman, we can see the windows behind him being shattered by the gunshots. On the inside of the truck door that Sandman robs, you can read the phrase, "Hold-ups don't just happen, they're planned." When Spider-Man thrusts his arm through Sandman, it's a reference to their very first encounter in the comics. As we've seen in videos about the previous films, Bruce Campbell always makes a cameo, and this time is no exception. For those who may not know him, he's the star of the Evil Dead franchise, which was also directed by Sam Raimi. The music played by the violinist is the same piece from the musical that MJ was fired from. When Peter cleans the ring, we can notice the spider bite on his hand. On the shelf in Peter's room, we can see the photo he took of MJ in the first movie. When Peter has a nightmare while being possessed by the black suit and then wakes up in front of a building, the scene is taken from, and inspired by, how the storyline was adapted in the 1990s animated series. When Spider-Man smashes Sandman's face against the train, if the scene is played in slow motion you can see one of the villain's teeth flying out. In another shot, when a metal pipe from the train hits Sandman, it's clear that he's actually missing that tooth. When this scene, Peter closes the balcony doors because the noise of the city bothers him. This is because the symbiote, which is possessing Peter at that moment, is vulnerable to sound. When MJ decides to visit Harry after leaving work, we can see that the street name is framed in such a way that it partially reads Har. When Harry and Peter talk about MJ at the cafe, the name of the street visible in the background is Jane, which is MJ's middle name, Mary Jane. The knife Harry uses to stab Peter is the same one he intended to kill him with in Spider-Man 2, before discovering that he was Peter. When Peter throws the pumpkin bomb at Harry, if the scene is viewed in slow motion, you can see Harry's body being hurled across the room. When Peter confronts Eddie at the Daily Bugle, the newspaper front pages from the first movie can be seen in the background. When Peter throws the evidence of the photomontage onto Eddie's desk, we can notice two things. Eddie has a photo of Gwen, and we can also see the details that revealed the photo was edited, such as the incorrect proportions of Spider-Man's leg and the black suit having red lighting highlights. On the Daily Bugle front page where they apologize to Spider-Man, we can read that it's not just an editorial apology, but one written in Jameson's own words. The article even includes a small joke, in which Jameson says that photographing Spider-Man solely with the intention of making him look like a criminal is not a policy of the Daily Bugle. In Dr. Connor's lab, we can see a lizard skeleton in the background, a reference to his alter ego in the comics. Just like with the ring, Peter manages to buy new clothes because they're on sale, reinforcing the idea that he's not in a good financial situation. It's quite likely that Peter knows how to play the piano because Aunt May taught him. This is suggested by the fact that Aunt May mentions in Spider-Man 2 that she used to give piano lessons.
Oh, but I'm giving piano lessons again.
The moment when Peter removes the symbiote suit in a bell tower is an idea taken from the comics. The girl who blackmails Jameson is the daughter of Sam Raimi, the film's director. When Eddie dies in the explosion, in a single frame you can see his skeleton during the flash. At Harry's funeral, we can see Flash Thompson returning, a character we hadn't seen since the first movie, who later went on to become Agent Venom in the comics.